Okay, I'm at the point where I can't not record this video. I know I haven't uploaded to my channel in a while, not like anyone actually noticed anyways, but it's been a while. I've been planning this for a while through various different forms because I want to talk about this film, and I want to make videos on this particular film because I genuinely think that this is one of the most Christian secular movies of all time, and there's a lot of good theological stuff you can get from it. Of course, like obviously you get your theology from the Bible, but then there's stuff I can use in K-pop Demon Hunters to support that or explain that a little bit better. And on top of the fact that it's so popular, I think that uh, I feel like this could be used as a tool to bring a lot of people to Christ just due to its sheer amount of popularity. And yeah, so this video serves kind of as an intro to my other videos on this particular film. I have about like probably like 10 or so videos that I planned for it. Although we'll see if I actually still have the motivation to make them, because I don't know, I lose motivation pretty quickly to make the videos. That's why I'm recording this in November and not in like August when the hype for the movie was at its highest. 2020, that's how many times I've watched this movie. I have watched it, I believe, more than any other movie ever, and it's because of that I can no longer cope. I have to call it my favorite animated movie of all time. Um, and it's probably in my top 10 favorite movies of all time either. Not to say it's the best. I do think there's a lot of both animated movies and movies in general that from like a critical standpoint would be better. But just in this, just like for me personally, I love this film so much that I have to call it that. 20 doesn't even feel real to me, I'm gonna be honest. Um, Although there was a time when that was like the only thing I watched. I'm at the point now where I'm probably gonna wait a long time before watching it again, unless I'm like introducing someone else to it. That's what the past few watches have been. Is like, yo, bro, you gotta check out this movie, and then you have to explain to them that it's actually a good movie. You're not just trolling them. When most people hear the title K-pop Demon Hunters, they're probably gonna be a little suspicious. But yes, I do want to talk about this. This is going to be kind of a brief overview of a lot of the different Christian ideas that I see in the particular film and why I I love it so much. And honestly, genuinely, this film has, I think, completely affected the way I watch all entertainment now, because I feel like now everything I watch, I'm doing whatever I can to try and find any Christian concepts in it. Though it's also possible that I've been just watching more stuff with Christian concepts in it. Like for example, like watching K-pop Demon Hunters is one of the main things that got me to watch Demon Slayer, which at the moment is my favorite anime. I don't care if it's basic or whatever. I love it. Demon Slayer is so good, and I also can find a lot of Christian concepts in that. I have a lot of video ideas for Demon Slayer as well. I'm focusing on K-pop Demon Hunters for the time being, though, just because I figured I might as well ride the hype train even as it dies off. I mean, at this point in November, I think it's finally starting to die off a little bit. Um, Although there has been a little bit of resurgence lately. This is kind of off topic. My next planned video is discussing what I think are bad takes I've heard from Christians on this film. Most of them I think are from people that haven't even watched it. But I know recently we had the viral social media post about some school that banned K-pop Demon Hunters, some Christian school that banned it for being anti-Christian, which is ridiculous. And I want to address that in my next video and talk about some of the things that could be seen as concerning for Christians, but I genuinely think that if you actually think about it, take some time to actually interpret the film, you can interpret this film in a really, really Christian way, and I don't see much problems with it. But anyways, I'm going to pull up my tablet screen here just so that I can kind of keep track of what I'm talking about. Okay, so first of all, why do I love it? I should probably like, why do I love it so much? First of all, it is just a genuinely good movie, because um like it just is like like most movie critics seem to love it. It has pretty high scores on your movie review sites, Rotten Tomatoes, etc., both from critics and from audiences. If I had to say, I have one major criticism with the movie from a critical standpoint, and that is that I do think that Rumi's arc is rushed quite a bit. I mean, she literally goes from uh Celine, please unalive me. I give up. And the very next scene, she goes and crashes the Sasha Boy's concert. So there seems to be, I think, a little bit of a gap missing there. It could be an attempt at like a misdirect in the film to make you wonder what Rumi's actually going to do, but I feel like they could have done a lot more with that. I also think they could have done a lot more with Celine. I hope that they do more with Celine in the next one. I think Celine can, there's a lot of stuff you can work with her. And I do have a video planned talking about her, despite the fact that she has like 30 seconds of screen time or something like that. Because I do think that Celine can be a very important lesson for Christians as well. She is, I kind of interpret Celine a bit as like some sort of a fundamentalist. Or you could even like call her like a modern day Pharisee in a ways. Like, at least if I'm tying it to like biblical ideas, because like she wants, like, okay, I should probably explain this. So I interpret the film where the patterns, the demon patterns, are like sin, and in a way, some of the demon, well, I'm not gonna say just some of the demon, I'm gonna say like Jinu is like a representation of a sinner. And technically speaking, it's important to note that like I do also consider like Rumi also to be like a sinner because of like patterns being sin, and I also think that it goes beyond just the patterns, the physical thing. It does showcase that people have sin, have flaws, and stuff like that. And honestly, I think that's probably the main takeaway from this, is I do think that this is probably one of the best sin allegories I've ever seen in a film. I shouldn't like, which I mean shouldn't surprise me, because I do believe that the creators of the film, multiple creators, people working on the film, did bring their experience in Christianity into it, which of course then shouldn't be surprising. I know EJ, for example, wrote Your Idol specifically to be like, to showcase the sin of idolatry, or to show the power of idolatry from a Christian standpoint. I want to make a video on Your Idol. Your Idol, I think, is my favorite villain song of all time, just because of how insanely, probably because of like how insanely it works both within the film, but also like as like a literal, basically as exposing the sin of idolatry. And it is so insanely like biblically demonic of a song. And it honestly, it works so insanely well. Like the only villain song I can think of right off the top of my head, at least as far as like movies goes, that's anything close to that, is Hellfire from Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is also an insane song for a kids movie. But yeah, anyways, I do want to make videos talking about the music. There's also interesting is like some of the songs, like Free, for example. I do consider Free has a lot of like word choice, and what it sounds like. What it sounds like both, I think, have a lot of lyrics that could in a way sound like a contemporary Christian song, which is not exactly a good thing, because if they were like this, they would get like bashed for having bad theology. But then again, if they have bad theology, then they'd fit right in with modern contemporary Christian music. So that's kind of interesting. This video is gonna be so long. Oh my gosh, I'm already at 8 minutes and I barely started talking about the stuff I have. I have so much notes on this film that I'm kind of using as like a reference for this video. Okay, so let's gather this for a second. So, I would address like I have a video going to address the concerns some Christians have with the film. That'll be my next video, so I'm not going to talk about that here. But yeah, so like I really like how this deals with the idea of patterns being sin. That's like kind of like what I mentioned, the main takeaway for that. And I do think that the patterns allow some sort of a physical representation of sin, but I think you can also consider, I think there's like this idea sort of metaphorical patterns as well, or metaphorical sin as well, because I mean it even shows like in what it sounds like, both Zoe and Mira do seem to recognize that they themselves have their demons in a metaphorical sense, which would be like their sin, which yeah, it works pretty well. And I do think that this also does a great job showing the shame that is caused by sin. Obviously, you have Jinu, for example. Jinu is very, very much ashamed of his sin, his patterns, abandoning his family. But then you also have like Rumi, whose shame is that she even has, the patterns in general, because I mean she was told that it was a problem to cover up, and I mean, if we are interpreting this film the way I do, and that patterns are sin, trying to cover up your sin is not exactly a good thing. There's a lot of Bible passages about that as well. That it's good, like as Christians we should confess our sins to one another, for example. Um, Anyways, Genu is my favorite character from the film. Let me just go to the next slide here. We'll go Genu is my favorite character from the film, just because I can relate to him quite a bit, at least as far as his like perception of self-worth and stuff. And I think that like he's done really, really well. Obviously he is a demon, but he is like a former human, which I think is kind of like the sympathetic demon trope is problematic, but being a former human type demon is a really good way to make me be okay with it. This is the same reason I'm okay with it in Demon Slayer as well, because it basically does a similar concept in that as well, just maybe in a little bit more of an intense way. But it's important to know that both of these series do play the sympathetic demon trope more towards the human they once were, and they never once actually like try to accept their demon side, which I think is also kind of relevant for that. There are times I have issue with this trope. This is not one of them. And again, like I mentioned, my interpretation of the film is that Genu is a sinner, basically who believes he's like too far gone. He has a lot of shame because of that, and he has to be, and like his journey through that I think is quite interesting. The one thing that might be lacking in making this like a true Christian allegory is a Christ allegory. I have a couple of ideas on how you could make it work, but it does require a little bit of stretching. I had one idea where Rumi and Genu effectively act as each other's Christ allegory, which first of all is problematic because they're humans. Because they're just humans, it implies that humans can save themselves, which is not biblically accurate, but you could make it work. You could interpret it that way. I also had an interesting idea about the Hanmoon. I do think there's something interesting about the Hanmoon, and could be utilized as a Christ allegory in some sense. I think it actually works maybe a little bit better as like a Holy Spirit allegory, you could argue. Again, it's not perfect. It doesn't really work, but I have thought about that a little bit. I do think there is something interesting to say. I've also tied the Hanmoon to the old versus new covenant, because of how, oh wow, I can't spell. Okay. Because in a way, like the blue Hanmoon, the one that they start with, could be seen as a representation of the old covenant. The golden Hanmoon, could be seen as like the Jews' hope for their Messiah, their idea of this like sort of like warrior king who will overcome their oppressors or something like that, which obviously is not what Jesus turned out to be. The golden Hanmoon, though obviously in world you could say the golden Hanmoon would be effective, but it clearly was missing something, and then they went for the rainbow Hanmoon, which would be the true like new covenant. I mean, I'm stretching a little bit here. I want to make videos dedicated to that particular concept, because I think that's much more interesting. And I'll need to take a little bit more time to actually do that, grab some Bible verses that might be relevant and stuff with that. But anyways, Genu, continuing with Genu, he I do consider this. Let me just do this. So Genu and Rumi, I do consider compliments. Obviously, like they're like like if you're talking about like their romantic relationship here, you can say it as well. I mean, compliments as far as their perception towards their sin, their patterns. Genu believes he's too far gone, and Rumi believes that she's too good for them. These are two types of people, and they have two different reasons why they would theoretically reject Christ. Genu would reject it because he believes he's not good enough. Rumi would reject it because she believes that she is too good, which of course in modern day is probably the more common opinion. I see a lot more people reject Christ for this reason, this one. Though also it's important to note that this kind of mindset is manipulated by Celine, which doesn't help. But like, I mean, it's not like this, like people don't manipulate people to have this perspective in the church either. Like that certainly does happen. Celine is such an interesting character for how little she gets, how little screen time she actually gets within the film. I'm excited to make that video. That might make some people upset. mostly because they'll probably end up with me calling a lot of the haters of this film Celine's. But you know, we'll get to that when I make that video. Okay, Genu, Rumi, where was I? This is what happens when you don't have a perfect script. You're just going off of notes, random notes in any order. What else do I love about this film? I do like the spiritual warfare aspect of this film. I think it does a pretty good job at showcasing what that might look like in a way that's like child friendly, right? Because I mean, the Saja Boys plan is super realistic as far as like what type of stuff Satan would actually use in order to like deceive people. For example, I do believe that Satan uses the music industry especially to manipulate people, which I think is relevant here. And the Saja Boys design is so brilliant. Oh my gosh, I love the Saja Boys. Could literally not be like any more perfect in this for the purpose of this film. So first of all, I probably will make a dedicated video for this, but the Saja Boys, first of all, their logo is a lion. The Bible mentions how Satan is like I believe the Bible refers to Satan as a lion at some point, lion trying to like snatch his prey or something like that. But also, it's important to note that God is also referred to as a lion, Lion of Judah, I believe in Revelation, maybe somewhere else in the Bible. I'm not 100% certain, which I think is interesting. There's also it's also like there's a reason that like C.S. Lewis chose a lion to represent God in Narnia, for example. It's because of that particular imagery, which I think so. Like, there's that double meaning, which is brilliant. Also, what possibly even more brilliant, their fan base is called the Pride, which is just it's so good because like a group of lions is called a pride, so there's that reason. But it's also like pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. It is, and in my opinion, my perspective of it, which I want to say is the most common perspective, is pride is basically the ultimate of the deadly sins. You could argue that anytime anyone commits a sin ever, they're committing the sin of pride because you would elevate your own morality above God. Pride is it's so brilliant how that they chose that. It really works, and like it like joy like the idea of joining the Pride like has such like a insanely demonic undertone to it, which I think works it works so well for their particular design. Like it's also important to note that like pride is like the sin of Lucifer. That's what got Satan casted out of heaven, as well, which of course like just goes to show like how significant and powerful the sin of pride is. And it's also important to note that like you could argue that Rumi is also struggling with pride in the particular story. Rumi is too full of pride to accept her sin. You could say, again, there's manipulation by Celine, whatever. It's not so there's a little bit more nuance, I guess. But then there's that, and then it's also I thought that the way they introduced the human Saja Boys was quite well done. Or like their human form, which at least to me made them appear as angels of light, which was in the alleyway after seeing Dr. Han. They walk in, especially Rumi's perception of Genu makes Genu look like an angel of light. Of course, you could just call it like a stereotypical rom-com moment, you could say, like that. But I felt like that was particular. But I like that. All right, I like that. And then it's also important to know, like, if we're just talking about like the music industry, for example, like the Saja Boys it's like what the Saja Boys could theoretically do, or like any like musical star or even just like celebrity in general, can both fuel like things such as like lust, and envy. Those are two of the 7 deadly sins, right? Two more of that. So like obviously for the Saja Boys, the lust would in theory primarily come from women, and then envy would probably primarily come from men. And then of course if the genders were swapped, it would be the other way around in theory. Not to say that like you can't have more than one of these, but It's particularly effective. This fame is a great way to make people um, desire something more that is not necessarily of God. Um, it's also important to note that the Saja Boys also work as um, work in a way to expose like the K-pop industry specifically, which I think is interesting. I keep running out. I keep forgetting that I have this set up on my Samsung Notes to go to the next slide instead of infinite scrolling, which is a little annoying, but I'm working with it, I guess. Go to the top. All right, so like specifically with K-pop, particularly through like the Saja Boys members, who obviously, with the exception of Jinu, don't really get real names. It's like what you have Abby, you have Romance, you have Mystery, and then Baby, right? And like these all sort of represent negative aspects of idol culture. Abby would be like sexualization. Obviously they make a big I guess gag around his abs. That's why he's called Abby. Romance could also be just like sort of the sexualization thing, but also sort of like having like a paranormal relationship. And in a way, oftentimes some people would be like a simp or like romantic or something like that towards that. And then you have like Mystery, which shows how like oftentimes like K-pop idols like struggle with invasion of privacy or something like that, and people go crazy over the people. They can't really live a private life. They can't like have time away from the spotlight, you could say. And then like Baby would be like infantilization, which you'd probably have to be a little bit familiar with the K-pop scene to kind of understand that is very much a real thing. People go crazy when a K-pop idol has a baby face. Speaking of which, K-pop members are called idols, which also has a double meaning. It works very well for your idol, but it also goes to the scene of idolatry. By the way, I don't have necessarily an issue with referring to someone as an idol. I don't like that. I don't really have an issue with that. Like a biblical idol is something that you put in your life above God. But like it could also like refer to like someone you look up to or someone that you aspire to be like, which isn't like inherently wrong. It certainly can become bad, but it's not like inherently wrong. So that's just another thing. And it's also important. I guess looking at my notes again. But yeah, obviously, like this kind of does the double meaning of the word idol into that kind of split idea of what it actually means to be like just like a famous person people look up to versus like an actual like spiritual idol. That would be obviously not a good thing. Okay. Okay, I see. I'm already at 22 minutes. I don't want to kick this on to go too long with this. Is there anything else that I want to talk about? I don't know. Like this film has genuinely changed so much about how I view stuff. I literally can't watch something without like actively trying to find a way to how I would use this film to preach Christianity or teach a Christian concept. This film works insanely well for it. Like I said early on, I do think this is one of, if not the best, secular Christian movies of all time. I have a feeling that this is going to be far more useful a tool for Christianity than some like your typical Christian movie slop. God's Not Dead, which is an objectively bad movie. And I'm sorry, you can't just like preach the gospel in a movie and then the movie's all of a sudden good. I know there's some Christians that have that mindset. That's not mine. We all know what the best example of Christian movies is, which is Hacksaw Ridge. Hacksaw Ridge is, in my opinion, the perfect example of how to be a Christian movie without being overly preachy, and what do you know? It's actually somewhat popular and even beloved outside of the Christian sphere, which means it actually be fairly effective as a tool of evangelism because of the fact that it's able to reach outside of our specific pocket, our specific like subculture, Christian subculture, stuff like that. And I do, and yeah. So my next video on this particular movie, we'll be addressing the controversial stuff more in detail and why I, as a Christian, don't have an issue with some of that stuff. Hopefully that will clear some stuff up. Admittedly, like that's like a 1% Christian. It's probably less than 1% of Christians that actually have an issue with K-pop Demon Hunters, and most of them haven't even watched it. Every single other Christian that I've talked to about this film does love it. And agrees that there's a lot of Christian concepts in it. And like, by the way, it wasn't even hard to get the Christian concepts in this. Sometimes you might have to take some leaps, stretch some things in the story to make it work. But K-pop Demon Hunters works it's insanely well for it. And I've watched it 20 times, so obviously I have analyzed it probably more than a lot of people. But like even on my first watch, I was able to recognize most of these themes. And possibly I'll grab even more later on, though at 20 views, I think I have a pretty good understanding of all the stuff in the film. So yeah, I do like some of the stuff that I want to talk about. Like I mentioned, I want to discuss the controversies. I want to discuss some of the spiritual warfare. I guess I do want to make a video talking about how I think Quima is a pretty good Satan allegory. And then I do want to make maybe a video just simply preaching the gospel in terms of K-pop Demon Hunters, or using K-pop Demon Hunters, something simple like that. I do want to talk about why the Saja Boys design in the film is so brilliant. I do want to talk about Your Idol as a song, perhaps some of the other songs as well. And then maybe I guess I have a couple video ideas on specifically talking about Jinu. Because I think that Jinu, at least for like I mentioned, he's my favorite character, and there's a lot that I can relate to regarding him. So I do want to make stuff like that. But anyways, if you made it this far, thank you for listening to my just nonstop ramble about this particular film that I love. And yeah, I think I will probably just end it there. So thank you for watching.